Hi, everyone. It's Pat Foley with recruitinginfo.com. We are continuing our interview series with people involved in college and youth athletics about what's going on in sports right now, particularly with COVID having been such a huge disruptive influence. I have very pleased today to be talking to Brian Parker, who is the women's soccer coach with Frostburg State, the Frostburg State Bobcats. He has been there for nearly 2 decades and has an absolutely stellar track record as a coach. One of the winningest, and ranked as one of the winningest coaches in the game, and also very important from my perspective because I'm all about the impact, the positive impact of youth sports. His teams have garnered NC, NSCAA team academic and team ethic awards multiple times in a row. So not only is he winning on the field, but he's doing a great job in terms of the way he's teaching his players to be good individuals and good citizens. So I really appreciate the time, Brian, that you've taken to talk to me today. Why don't we start with well, soccer in COVID. Where are you right now? What's happening in your conference?
Well, first, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And I hate to say we're all getting a little too familiar with this over the last 6 months.
Yeah.
We followed the NCAA protocols, of course, and our administration first did make a decision to open the campus for in-person learning. We are, as a campus, in a mode where about 25% of our classes have always been virtual, have always been in an online format. The other 75% are now what we're calling hybrid or blended. So that can mean a class could meet once or twice for the whole semester at the start to kind of get things going, or they could meet every other session or once a week. It really enables the professor to have a lot of variability.
Mhm.
And of course, prepares us should we have to go entirely virtual to do that at a moment's notice. So frankly, it was a pretty good idea. And I think a lot of campuses have taken upon the task of really training their faculty to be virtual learners and learn a lot about virtual education and the tools we have available, invest in more tools, and make it a valuable way to deliver content, of course. In athletics, we started with the universal baseline testing, and when we all moved in at the same time as the students. We did back up our semester 2 weeks, calendar-wise, in order to end by Thanksgiving.
Mhm.
So we did universal testing, what's called baseline testing, and then we're now engaged in what's called surveillance testing. So 25% of the entire campus population, as well as the athletic population, is randomly sampled every week. So
Okay.
once we did a month of that, we essentially tested everyone else one more time, and then we just completed a second round of universal testing. So our case counts are on our website. I think we had 23 out of 4,000 cases the first time, 23 positives. It's been manageable. I wouldn't say very, none of it's,
Nothing about
zero is manageable.
Yeah.
But we've been able to manage it, and we haven't had to do a whole lot of large group quarantining, fortunately. But we're, like most college campuses, living day by day and week by week, and just hopeful that our students continue to make good decisions and do follow all the mitigation measures. And we've been fortunate. We've been able to train our team. We're in what you would call a non-traditional or non-championship mode,
Mhm.
which is like a 45-day off season, or for us would be a spring season. So we're training 3 times a week. Now we're training 4 times a week and able to evaluate our new players and squad scrimmage and actually do some strength and conditioning. And I'm just, thankful and conveying that to our players to be thankful and grateful every day that we can train and be together and work out and form a team, even though we're not going to be competing against other schools. Everyone is kind of talking about spring seasons right now,
Mhm.
which I think is more or less a delay to see if we could get that vaccine and somehow get it to a large number of school kids by March 1st or so, and maybe go out and compete. So again, I would not want to make any predictions, but I think everyone is just hopeful that perhaps we could play some real games before the school year is out.
Yeah, I mean that's been one of the toughest things about this whole saga this year is that the one thing that is consistent is uncertainty. I mean, we didn't, it started back in March with everything getting shut down, we didn't know if there was going to be any kind of athletics during the summer months. Thankfully, at the youth level, there was a fair amount of sports going on this summer, and largely, I would say, without major incidences that I'm aware of in terms of spreading or kids, being harmed, which is of course number one priority. But it was great to see kids get back out and compete, and I think they really mentally benefit when they've got that time on the field. And
Yeah, and of course, all the benefits of athletic participation are always still there. And so I think the time management benefits of it, the discipline that kind of comes with it, training every day, obviously the camaraderie and the social interaction is, humans need that. And
huge.
to be able to get the team together every day and do something, even amid all these protocols, has been very valuable. And I've just really tried to really drill it into our kids to just be grateful every day and basically don't blow it,
Right.
behave well and be smart, call people out who aren't following the protocols, and let's all try to stay safe.
Well, that is a huge theme for me personally, and the website is that athletics is part of the education process. There's a tendency sometimes to sort of separate that, and particularly there's issues now, financial issues that are putting stress on college athletics, and some people have the mentality that you save money by getting rid of athletics and direct that money to education. I argue that athletics is education, and that the measurable impact of athletics on child development is as big as anything else that happens in education,
Of course, yeah. I get to teach a little bit in our coaching minor here sometimes, to teach a soccer course actually. And
rather.
one of the first things we address with coaching philosophy and sort of some initial thoughts is to be able to explain why you're doing what you're doing, and we really we dress it in an empirical way, really, all of the positive impacts that are correlated with athletic participation, and they are numerous. I mean, it's even been documented in research that college graduates not only get better jobs, but are actually happier later in life for
Yeah.
having participated in college sports,
Yeah.
which is pretty amazing, really.
Absolutely. The metrics, and even more so with women athletes, but athletes in general, it's been studied, and we see the impact on, first of all, career happiness, participation in politics or civics, civic involvement. I mean, it has huge impacts. My daughter, I got involved in youth sports because my oldest daughter was a very shy pre-K little girl, and I had to get her to play soccer. I had to coach, I had to be on the field with her. And one thing led to another, and many years later, I'm still here and involved. But she's now a very confident and fierce high school lacrosse player, and I do wonder how. I think that her involvement in sports really helped. I could sort of see her come out of her shell through sports, from a shy little girl to a confident bigger girl. So, but that's anecdotal. From a scientific standpoint, there is a correlation between athletics and good outcomes. So
Absolutely.
let's talk about the impact of COVID on the recruiting process. So, I'm more familiar with lacrosse. Lacrosse junior year, September 1 of junior year is when coaches are allowed to reach out to the players and start talking specifically about recruiting. What's the schedule for NCAA soccer recruiting, and how has that been impacted?
So you probably know that in Division III, the contact rules are really not there. Division III folks can contact and reach out and evaluate any, defined prospect when they enter ninth grade.
Oh, I did not know that. Okay.
Yeah, they can. So In Division One and Two, the magic day now for most sports, I think lacrosse and softball might be the two that wait for September 1st. But the magic day for Division One and almost all of Division Two is June 15th at the end of the sophomore year.
Okay.
So that's the magic day when we can reach out, email, phone call if we want, text message, and elicit a response in terms of recruiting interest from players. Prior to that time, we just have a standard email that we reply to that says, it actually says, here are the rules.
Right.
And here are some general things we can share, very specific, but we can't really discuss recruiting or an evaluation of the player until June 15th. Division Two, folks can still visit in their 9th and 10th grade years. You can just pop in and show yourself. But that's not actually allowed in Division One. I think it was August 1st and for most sports, and then September 1st for softball and lacrosse. So obviously, I hate that they use the word dead period. We use the word quiet period in Division Two to describe sort of a moratorium on that kind of communication and evaluation. Really, the in-person contacts, what they define as a contact. I go watch a game, student comes visit my campus. Those are the things that were limited in this quiet period or dead period for Division One and Two. So you can still email and contact and engage like this, frankly, with students, but you can't get out and evaluate them in person. Our moratorium in Division Two ended September 1st, or it ended September 1st. And then the Division One folks decided to extend theirs until January 1st of 21, the end of the calendar year. And I'll be honest with you, I haven't talked to a Division One coach who likes that decision. So I don't know what the rationale was, other than, I guess, some sense of fairness that some schools weren't open or weren't funded, I guess, for recruiting budgets, or that traveling still had some dangers to it. Certainly, I don't think people are expecting recruits to fly cross country to visit Power 5 schools right now, and maybe that kind of prohibition, or just the risk of travel maybe was a part of it. I guess that's the logic of it, but there aren't many Division One coaches who would rather not be out watching games.
Sure, of course.
So the D3 folks have been out watching games all summer, and the division, like I went to my first event on Labor Day weekend, and we've been able to have visits on our campus with lots of conditions and masking and all that, of course. But we have been able to meet with folks in person, which has been nice. I mean, again, some sense of normalcy. You want to sit down and have a conversation face to face with a prospective player and their parents, for sure.
Yeah, and I guess the fact that soccer, at least on the D1, D2 level, starts in sophomore year, I guess helps, because with lacrosse starting in the junior year, if you're a junior, you missed the summer. Really, there wasn't as many tournaments, there wasn't as many opportunities for coaches to go out and actually see the kids play. And there's not a heck of a lot of time left. So commitments are happening now without there having been a lot of in-person viewing. At least with soccer, the fact that they start junior means, I guess, a lot of it will get compressed into the junior year maybe, and they'll kind of hold on.
So what we learned when we transitioned to Division Two is that June 15th date, I think, had been there for some time. It makes great sense because the students are not engaged in classes daily with their high schools. They're out in the club environment, able to do camps and things and be seen. The September 1 date, frankly, does not make a lot of sense to me, because obviously for fall sport, maybe for softball and lacrosse, it's a little easier to do fall recruiting.
Yeah.
But most high schools play fall soccer around here now. Not all of them do, of course. It's about half, maybe a little more than half. Some play in the winter and spring. But the club season, kids are in schools. They're not able to travel as easily. They've got commitments. So to wait for school to start and then begin a recruiting cycle, even if they had said August 1st and you had a few weeks there before most schools started classes to get out and do visits, that I'm sure they'll be fine tuning that and revisiting that over time. I would think, because they have been lately in Division One, changing it a bit already.
And do you think there's going to be a lot of kids that are going to end up committing to a coach that really hasn't seen them play and is just going to have to rely on video and things like that? Or
no, I would never name names, but there are plenty of coaches out there I've spoken with in Division One who are highly frustrated about the rule. And so they're engaging in a lot of virtual recruiting,
Okay.
Watching videos now is crucial.
Yep.
Getting evaluations through references, club coaches, even high school coaches in some cases, very important. Having Zoom meetings, getting kids on the Zoom call from the college teams to really try to impress recruits. There's all kinds of virtual things happening that I'm sure coaches 6 months ago would have never thought of doing. So to be honest with you, two things happening I think that are important. One is if you're what I would call a tweener, if you're a player who might have some Division I interest, but you're not sure, or you're sure if you're even at that level, then some of the smaller D1s are going to be waiting for the bigger D1s, and some of the D2s are going to be waiting for the D1s to maybe do that in-person visit, hopefully in January, February, if they don't extend it again.
Yeah.
I hope not. But hopefully they're waiting to get on campus and do these visits in January, February, and then see who doesn't get offers and then move on to their second, third choice, whatever. Some want to wait. Some recruits don't want to wait. I think
Yeah.
some coaches certainly don't want to wait. So to be honest with you, right now it is often the competitive stimulus is what's driving a lot of this.
Sure.
So coach will say something like, we would not like to have to make her an offer before the first of the year so we can have a more formal visit at a D1. But if our competitor makes her an offer, then we might have to.
Yeah.
So players who do want to wait are probably being given some of that time. But if someone jumps in the game and makes an offer, then their top school might have to react to that. And so that competition is always going to be there. And unfortunately, some decisions are going to be made potentially without in-person contact, without face-to-face contact.
Yeah.
I don't think this doesn't really meet the definition, unfortunately.
Yeah, right. No, it's not. It's interesting. I'm watching right now. Our friends go through this process with their daughter, and it's a really stressful process to begin with because applying to college and finding the right college is stressful. But there's a unique aspect I think to the college recruiting sports side of things because there is sort of like dominoes fall. The first top recruits get their offers and then they make their choices and then it sort of filters down to different levels of players who have to kind of wait and see, and no one knows. The coaches don't know who's going to accept offers and therefore how much space they're going to have, and it's an incredibly stressful process for a kid to go through and for parents to go through. And now you've got COVID, which has just thrown everything into chaos, and everything is different and changing. And I really feel for everyone who's involved, the coaches who have to basically invent a new process, and the kids who have to go through an inherently stressful process in a more chaotic way.
Yeah, and so I imagine this might be your next question, but the other big effect, of course, are I'm using the word holdover players, fifth-year players.
Extra year, yep.
Yeah, so the Ivy League kind of famously came out in the spring regarding spring sports athletes and said, we're not going to fund the fifth-year players. We don't want the fifth-year players.
Right.
They didn't say it that way, but they basically said, graduate and move on and good luck with your life. And we're going to move on. I think the Ohio State AD came out and was the first Power 5 coach to say the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So every school, I don't know that there'll be a lot of conference-wide decisions. There could be. But in some cases, finding out, like asking coach, how are you handling those fifth-year players and how is that affecting my recruiting class is a massive question. So I'll give you our example is pretty simple. We don't have that killer senior class right now that we want to hold over for 21. We had 4 seniors. What happens at our school and a lot of schools, frankly, with these women's soccer athletes, I'm sure it happens in other sports. I know it does. If they graduate early, if they do anything, they leave early. They don't stay late. So we've had one fifth-year player in the last 10 years, I think, who was a transfer who changed her major. So unless it's that kind of situation, we have kids leave early. So I had one girl go and student teach this fall, and another senior took a real job. She got a real job during the pandemic, and so she's not playing. So we don't have that killer returning senior class, but we have a big junior class. And I have it turns out I had to sit them down and have some interviews and really ask them, does it make sense to you academically? Obviously health concerns. And so we will probably have 4 players from our current junior class stay over for fall 22.
Wow.
So that suddenly means we have we are a scholarship program now. We have less resources and we have less roster room for fall 22s. And now to ask a current freshman or sophomore on my roster, what are you going to do in fall 23 or 24 is kind of silly. So we're going to kind of wait until they become juniors and then kind of look at where they are academically, and does it make sense? Again, I'll have some girls leave early throughout this whole period, but some may stay late. And so this rolling wave of holdover players is going to last a few years. And I think it's going to make rosters,
Absolutely.
it's going
It's
to make
like,
rosters crowded and budgets a little harder on. And so I think most ADs are going to say, Coach, you can keep those fifth-year players, but you have to work it out in your budget. And they may even say, and by the way, your budget is now frozen, or it maybe even might decrease. So it's going to be very tight.
I talked to a coach who is involved. It's not a big team sport. It's more of an individual sport, and they have smaller numbers. And his holdovers are really having an impact because he only got a handful each year of scholarships because of the nature of the sport. So his holdovers he may not have any to give. He may not have any scholarships this year. And to your point, it's not just this year. It's going to reverberate. It's like the impact of a storm that has blown through, and you don't get to clean it up for a while.
Yeah, and so one of the ways I've looked at it is, and a lot of coaches are coming to realize this right now, is they're kind of re-recruiting their current team actually. And they're kind of saying, okay, like I may have a freshman who I just recruited who's outstanding. I may want her for that fifth year, but maybe not everyone in that recruiting class is going to get that invitation. So coaches are going to be making some tough decisions about who they want to have stay versus maybe who they don't. And obviously, I think the academic fit is my first priority. We have a 5-year athletic training program, for example, where the students stay and earn a master's degree. So 2 of those girls just pop their head in the office and say, hey, you're going to get us for a fifth fall. And so I said, oh, okay, I better do the math on this. And so I quickly did. And now we kind of have a plan for how we're going to address it. But there's going to still be some surprises, and I think a lot of more full rosters than some prospects expect.
And how are you figuring this all out? Are you having Zoom calls with other coaches? Is there some sort of network of coaches where you're all kind of figuring
Well,
this
I kind of joke, I've been at this 20 years. I know a lot of people.
yeah.
And so I just get on the phone and call a couple of these worker bee Division I assistants typically.
Yeah.
And I say, hey, what's your formula? How are you working it out? When we went Division II and got a scholarship budget and, pretty awesome responsibility, frankly, I made a ton of those calls to a lot of colleagues in the scholarship world, Division II and I, and got a lot of great advice. And there's not as much, college sports, the sport itself, especially soccer and any fluid team sport, it's not an algebra equation. There's no way to figure it out. And so the recruiting puzzle is kind of like that too. It's unique for every student and unique at every school. And you can apply there's guardrails, of course there's rules, and of course there's super important questions to ask, but this idea of having, I've heard some students, for example, on the holdover issue, there are schools that have that killer senior class right now, and they might want 6 kids to stay over because now they want 21 to be their big fall year in soccer.
Right.
So now their actual 21 commitment class, the committed class, is going to be squeezed a little bit. So that's going to even happen at some places right away. So it's really different everywhere.
Yeah. Well, I do not envy you this mess because it just seems so challenging to try to sort through it all. And I worry too about the financial impact of basically basketball and football drive the revenue in broadly speaking in college sports. They're driving the revenue, and when they lose the revenue, then everyone else loses the revenue too. So you've seen some schools have shut programs down. There's going to be less funding, and I worry about it, but I also feel for you guys who are on the front lines of trying to figure.
So I think the budget impact is going to be a little bit of a reverse bell curve in a way, right? The schools at the very top, the Power Fives, who really have come to rely on that massive TV revenue, are certainly going to be affected by it. I mean, I remember I was a grad student at WVU back in the 90s, and when we got a bowl game, we built another floor on the library. That money was very valuable to our campus, So that's happening everywhere. Now, of course, the really enrollment-driven smaller schools are going to also be affected. because I think a lot of people who study this know the demographics are not good for higher education. There's just less graduates
Yeah.
to compete for across the board, and that's going to continue. That there's a recessionary little bubble there in 7, 8, 9 where the birth rate was really low. And so
Mm.
when those kids come of age and become recruitable high school players, there's going to be a dip in overall enrollment in colleges.
Mm.
So some folks are expecting this and are prepared for it. Others maybe not so. It's going to,
Mm.
unfortunately, there'll be some bad times before things, I think, get back to any kind of normal
Well, that's
at a
it.
lot
That
of
is an
schools.
interesting point because the at a D2 or D3 school, I mean, there is, like you say, enrollment pressure, but otherwise there isn't really, you haven't lost TV revenue for your college, your football program. So you've sort of run, those programs are run out of the school budget as opposed to being run, out of a football based budget.
Yeah, athletic fees are huge. I think I would say probably the majority of schools.
Yeah,
Students pay an athletic fee. Part
right,
of their fee package helps fund the athletic department,
right.
and other auxiliary revenues that come from things like meal plans and dorm space, especially, help fund things like athletics. And so enrollment is massive. And obviously, what a lot of people have been monitoring is how those enrollment pressures have affected decision makers, because some folks are in a lot of areas, it's been, lives versus livelihoods, and
Yeah,
staying open is maybe dangerous in some businesses, right? I wouldn't want to own a bar or a movie theater right now. And,
sure.
college dorms, you have to be very, very careful. Everyone who's ever been to college remembers when a bug ran through the dorm. So we have to be very, very careful, and
Yeah.
and that's expensive. It's an investment, and a lot of schools are making it, but again, it's different everywhere how folks are reacting to it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I want to, first of all, I should give a shout out to Gwen Shem, who is a player of yours who wrote a great blog post for recruiting info about a day in the life of a college athlete. And then she said, "Oh, you got to talk to Brian Parker, my coach. He's terrific." And I do appreciate you taking this time to talk to me. It's as many kids play soccer that this is the first time I've talked to someone from the soccer realm. So I really appreciate your
So,
guidance.
so Gwen's a great example. I like to use the phrase, and I love this about Division 2 and 3 sports, is we say squeeze the school for everything you can get. And so I love sending off a lot of type A, athletic girls, smart girls, to go to honor societies and clubs. And she's a writer, and she went to the school paper and became the editor and
Wow.
was a 4.0 student. So she's a great example, and I'm very, very proud of her.
Yeah, should be. Well, thank you, Brian, again for your time. This was terrific, and good luck in the getting through this mess and getting back to some form of normality for sports and for all of us.
This week has been a great week. Let's hope for next week.
All
Thanks
right.
very much.
Thanks. Bye bye.